Hey, everybody. Welcome to Badge Banter, where we feature some incredible stories about the value of the ID badge and its ability to enable organizations to better recognize and connect people. I am Lindsay Martin-Nez from Badge Pass, and I'm very excited to introduce you to today's special guest. Today's guest is Paul Timm, who is the Director of Education Safety at Allegion and also the author of the book School Security: How to Build and Strengthen a School Safety Program. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, before we get started, can you do us a favor and tell us a little bit about your role at Allegion and the book that you wrote on school safety?
Sure. I'm Director of Education Safety, as mentioned, and as such, we really head up all of the especially K through 12 programs that we have here. I work out of the marketing department, but I really spend most of my time in the field conducting physical security assessments. It's really mostly schools. We do go outside of that as well. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to assess every one of the visitor centers at national parks in the state of Alaska, which was really a kind of a career highlight. But it's mostly school security assessments and then a whole lot of training and presentations. You'll find me at conferences, and that's the last time we saw each other at a conference.
That's right. You are always at a conference. I feel like if I just followed you around, I'd be at every school safety conference in America.
Yeah, and I don't want to be a professional conference goer, but so I try to pick and choose as I move along. But I'm always glad to network and spend time, and it's part of the fun to meet people and make friendships at conferences.
Yeah, definitely. So, and you obviously have lots of great stories to share. So, you have decades of experience in school security and safety. And so, with all of that experience, I'm sure you run into tons of things. But what would you say is one misconception about campus safety that you think still persists today? And what are the risks of that misconception?
Well, I think that people often purchase products and solutions, systems, things like that, and think they're good to go. I got the new, and I'm not against cameras, but camera system or intrusion detection system or electronic access control system, and now we're safe. And I try to tell clients that people determine the value of systems and products. And so, we can have everything that we want, but if we leave the barn door open in the back, we're really, those systems are not going to do what we wanted. Now, I will say this: it used to be, if you had asked me this a couple decades ago, the same question, I would have said, people would have said, it's not going to happen here. I think much of that misconception is gone. I mean, today, Lindsay, we have students who were both at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and currently at Florida State with that latest shooting that they had. I think that misconception is now something we're seeing being left in the past. The new misconception is that the fancy systems that we bought are going to make us safe.
So I love that you said this. I had Jill Lemon from Evolve on earlier this season. She's fantastic. I know you know this. But she and I both discussed this as well about how sometimes schools will make an investment and they're like, oh, well, yeah, we're good to go. But really, like when it comes to school safety, especially, it's more about a layered approach to school security. And no matter how many systems you put in place, you could have a million layers. It's still the people and the processes that ultimately, at the end of the day, determine if they're even going to be effective. So I love that you said that and touched on that, because that comes up repeatedly in any guest that I have, in any conversation that I have about school safety.
Shout out to Jill. She and I were just texting today, and she's terrific.
Yeah, she really is one of the best. So, and that's one of my favorite episodes of Badge Banter was hers earlier this season. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. So when it comes to school safety and security, like I always wonder this, and I say this a lot about schools. Every time I walk in, like they're trying to create this community and this really welcoming environment where people feel like they want to be there. How do you strike the right balance between physical security and fostering a welcoming environment for students and staff?
Yeah, I think really the key here is that we don't want to trade security for convenience. And a welcoming atmosphere can lend itself to convenience. We're welcoming, so we're going to leave all the doors open. Or we're welcoming, so we're not going to really put people through visitor management, or this is a special event, just let people come in. We have to remember the ABCs of access control. We have to make sure we have excellent communication systems, that we are seeing something and saying something if something suspicious is happening. I really liken it to a vehicle. Lindsay, I'm way older than you. I grew up in the 70s, and for some of our younger listeners, that was a decade in the last millennium. But in the 70s, you could still own a vehicle that did not have seatbelts. And I remember I have a family of two sisters, so we have a family of five. Sometimes we all rode together in the front seat. There was a bench in the front seat of a car, not individual seats. There were too many accidents with too many injuries and too many fatalities. And today we live with seatbelts, and no one is complaining because we know it's the right thing to do. Today, we're glad that our cars have airbags. The newest vehicles have radar, which tell you if you're veering from one lane to another or if somebody's getting too close to you. All of these things are not encroaching on us wanting to have a vehicle and enjoying the ride. And I think schools are the same way. We need to tighten up some things, and we'll be glad when we look back to say, yeah, doors probably should have been closed and locked when teaching was going on, not just wide open. And so I think there's a parallel in those two things.
I agree with what you're saying. So I always think about school safety from a parent perspective because I'm like right in the heat of your kids being in school. And we were just at an event, and it's the end of the school year. So like, all your schools are hosting all kinds of events, and parents are coming for awards days and lunches and field days and you name it. And so I was at a recital this week, and I remember talking to my husband in line to check in, and he's like, this could be so much more efficient. And I was like, for sure. But also, if you just bypass the system when it's a special event and let everyone like just come in, then you've thrown like any security that you had all year out the window. So as a parent, I would rather be slightly inconvenienced and know that my school that my kid's at is implementing correct security measures and doing the right things to keep them safe. Because it really isn't that inconvenient at the end of the day. Like, we know that there's risks to the school. And as a parent, I want to see them implementing those things. And not just because I work in the security industry.
Well, and if I can go one step further, there was a day, my kids are all adults now, and my second child was just saying, Dad, I'm going to be 31. I'm no longer young. But anyway, I remember I would go to have lunch with my kids in elementary school and bring McDonald's for other kids at the table. Well, there's no way that was a great idea. They really didn't know a lot about me. The parents of those other kids knew nothing about me. If I brought granola bars and there was a child who had nut allergies, I could have really put people in peril. And so I'm not afraid of the boogeyman. I just say we've learned lessons over the years. So let's take care to be careful.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So when it comes to school safety, like there's a whole lot of things that schools can do and schools can implement, which sometimes I think can make it seem very daunting and overwhelming if you're like trying to get the ball rolling and implementing new security measures. But what's one piece of like low hanging fruit, something easy that every school could address immediately, like do today, that would make an immediate impact on improving safety that you think often gets overlooked?
I think culture gets overlooked. I think what happens is we've got good security systems and practices in place, but then somebody winds up working against us, whether it's a prop door or they're not wearing their badge or whatever it might be. And so when we educate, and really that's the low hanging fruit, how can we educate staff, whether it's transportation drivers or lunch staff or teachers? We've got to educate staff. And when we bring them the correct safety practices and they actually implement them, we get personal investments that change the culture. That's what See Something, Say Something is all about. That's what reporting the door that's not latching properly is all about. That's what making sure if I'm walking outside and the parking lot light is flickering and not working properly, the vegetation is overgrown. Our culture can really be a great protection element. And we've often overlooked that. And we say, well, we don't have time to train people. It's too hard to get everybody to do online training. But I think if we put it into, and I've often said this, 3 minutes of a briefing in every staff meeting gets people to think about tornado preparedness, gets people to think about social media risks, gets people, and all of a sudden we're beginning to all have a safety mindset. I might not be able to get everybody, but the more people I get, the safer we are.
I love that 3 minute idea because if you're going to do a whole like school safety session or whatever on just that topic, it does feel like, well, there's so many other topics we have to address, but they're meeting with their staff regularly. They're having conversations and updates about other things. You throw 2-3 minutes on the agenda to constantly just do little reminders or remember this, or, hey, if you see this, notify somebody. And here's why it's important. Like, they all care. It isn't that I don't think there's a school where the staff doesn't care. Like, they all want to do the right thing. Sometimes it's just they have a lot on their plate. Like, they don't even necessarily know what it is. So their 3 minute suggestion, like, love that. That is way less scary than scheduling all these like very specific trainings.
Yeah, thank you. You could be my co-director of safety education.
I'm on board. Let's do it. All right. So best laid plans, like people come up with all these great ideas, solutions, implement practices. And sometimes it just doesn't work the way that they necessarily saw it working. Can you share a moment or a story when a safety solution didn't really work quite as planned, and what you learned about that as a result?
Yeah, I've got one, and it ties into a lot of the things that we've been talking about already. I was working with a school that had visitor management software, and I don't want to brand for the biggest companies that provide that solution, but visitor management software. I come in, I provide my ID, it gets scanned against databases for registered sex offenders. Basically, if there's a hit, then people get notified and can come and make sure, because anyone who's a registered sex offender is not allowed within X number of feet of a school building, period, and they all know that. But anyway, I was working with a school, and it was a Monday, and they said, we had something weird happen on Friday. And I said, tell me about it. And they said, well, we had this young guy contractor who came in, and we scanned him, and it came up as a hit in the sex offender registry. And he immediately said, oh, that happened a year ago. That's my girlfriend. She was underage. Her parents were the ones who issued the complaint. And they said, well, we can't let you into the building. And he said, okay, fine, I'll go tell my boss I need to be sent to another job. And they said, what do you think about that? Did we do everything right? And I said, no, let's call the police right now. Let's call the police now. The moment that individual stepped on the property, they violated the law, and they knew it. And what we did is we allowed them to talk their way out of it. And we, first of all, need to call police. A law has been broken. I don't care if it's Monday and this happened on Friday. And second of all, we need to call that contractor and say, what will you do to make sure that this never happens again? So it's, as we've been talking about, it was more of the system did the right thing, but we failed in how we were supposed to respond once the system notified us.
So we sell visitor management systems, so I'm like obviously very in tune with this. And for me, that's always been my whole career. Every time you're implementing a system, you're talking to a school, they're like, well, what do we do if? And I'm like, you decide what you do if, but you better decide before we go live with the system. And you better train everybody that's using it, because it can be really intimidating if you're the operator. And like, imagine if that's a substitute. Like, that's not even the lady who normally works the front desk that day. Like, just establish what you want your policies to be, or build good workflows that don't even make that person have to decide. Like, notify security automatically where the operator doesn't even have to be involved in making that decision. Like, the campus safety officer or police officer decides what happens now. Because you're right. Like, you're in the moment and you're still trying to be nice. Like, they're always trying to be nice at schools. And so they're still trying to be nice to this guy. But if you don't tell them what the policy and procedure is, like, how do you expect them to know what to do?
Exactly right.
No, that's a really good example. So thank you for sharing that story. So I've heard the term like purposeful security get thrown around a lot. So what do you think, what does purposeful security mean to you in the context of education? and how can administrators adopt this mindset?
Yeah, first of all, let me just dovetail right on that term education. In the context of K through 12, I think is what you're meaning. But education is really the word I want to focus on. Instruction, training, whatever can help equip me to understand the concept empowers me to be able to behave and act in accordance with our safety program. If I'm not sure, or if I think I should have my own special rules, like propping a door or whatever it might be, all of a sudden everything begins to go sideways right away. But once somebody says, and occasionally this happens, Lindsay, you speak at a lot of conferences, I speak at a lot of conferences. Somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I was just at a school the other day. My husband is a superintendent, and I realized that I had brought him lunch, but I forgot it. My hands were full. I went to prop the door and go back to the car, and I heard your voice saying, "Don't prop the door." And listen, I don't want to be the voice of anything that's negative. I don't want to be a wag and whine person like, don't prop the door. I want to be somebody who's providing the instruction that equips the person to understand why this is a big deal and why their contribution is going to matter. And once they're deputized, my job is finished. Otherwise, what am I doing? I'm speaking into the wind. I always tell people at a conference, the value of what I'm sharing today is going to be determined by the application that you make. So please, write it down, hold yourself accountable, have other people hold you accountable, because if you can change behavior in any way, we're all going to win.
Even if it's small, like to your point, something so minor as don't prop the door. And almost every teacher has always had a moment where they wanted to prop the door open for some reason. It's like the number one thing I think that our team sees when they're doing security walkthroughs too is propped doors. But when they not necessarily hear the negative voice in their back of their mind, but when they remember the positive outcome of not propping the door, that motivates them to not do that, even if it is more convenient. I think that that's great.
And I'd like to give an attagirl or an attaboy to whoever is following the practice. Occasionally someone will say, I come to a school and they'll say, I need to ask for your ID. I'm sorry. I say, no, thank you for your efforts to keep schools safe. Thank you for holding the line and for following the practices. I'm glad. I'm one of the good guys. I got nothing to hide at all. I'm glad to be in a place that's a safe learning environment.
I love that. Yes. Everyone should adopt that mindset when they visit a school, because it only serves to benefit everybody in there. Well, I am so passionate about this. We could literally talk about school safety all day. And probably should do this again, honestly, because it was fun. But unfortunately, we only have so much time together. So, but thank you for sharing those insights and those ideas with us. Like, they're really great little tidbits to take away from that, Paul.
You're welcome, and thank you. Listen anytime.
Well, before we wrap, we have to do my favorite segment. So this season, we added a new segment to Badge Banter called Badge Blitz. And so what happens is, for 60 seconds, we use this old school timer. I will rapid fire ask you some questions that you could not prepare for because I did not send them to you in advance. And you're just going to give me your gut reactions to each of these questions, all right?
Great.
All right. You ready? Let's do it. All right. First, what is one thing that every school should do to increase security?
I think every school should improve access control. Who's coming onto the property, who's coming into the building, and where are they going in the building? How do we control that?
Perfect. What is a current industry practice or outdated technology that drives you crazy?
I think I find legacy pieces, especially to cameras, occasionally even a fake camera or a camera they left up that's no longer working, which is a tremendous liability to the school. If an incident happens in front of that camera and I come for justice and you say it's not working, you're in trouble legally. So I think legacy pieces to any kind of system, let's get rid of them. Let's remove them now.
Okay. If you could change lives with one person for one day, who would it be?
If I could change lives with one person, I think I would probably like to be the president of the United States, and I would like to put some focus in places that it should be. For example, school security.
I love that. I also think that would be fun to do for a day. I'm with you 100% on that. Well, thank you. That's all the questions we could fit in to 60 seconds, but I appreciate your candid answers. And this was super fun. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's always great to have great guests who are so impactful in the industries that they serve. And you're definitely one of those. So thank you for being here, Paul.
Lindsay, you're always a delight. Keep smiling.
Well, thank you. I will do my best. And to everybody else, we hope you'll join us next time as we take you beyond the badge.